Rosemarie Prelinger. She's been a dear friend for many, many years. In fact, I graduated from high school with her son, Alexander Werba, who's in the back here, and his brother Roland here. So they're going to be helping out today as needed for this great program. I have had the opportunity to taste this apple strudel several times, and I'm telling you, you're in for a treat, not only learning how to make it, but there will be tasting. So I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I do. I've particularly had it lately in Killingworth, where Rosemarie curates a concert series at the Little Church in the Wilderness.
Oh, yes.
And if you're interested in getting on the email list for that concert series, there's a sign-up sheet there, and should be glad to add you to the list. Not required, but you might enjoy that. So many years ago, how long since you retired? Or maybe that's a secret.
Oh, no.
Some years ago, Rosemarie
ago.
was a science teacher. So she has a background teaching science to kids. And I wonder, would you say apple strudel's a science or an art or a little bit of both?
Both, definitely both.
Okay, all right. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this great program. And Rosemarie's come here today as a favor, and she's come gratis for us, including bringing supplies for us to taste. So please give her a warm welcome. And the stage is yours.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so pleased to have an audience that you're all interested in making Apfelstrudel, which is called in Switzerland, apple strudel. So I'm going to go ahead and put my apron on. You know, we need an apron on, otherwise it'll be full of flour. And there we go. And then I couldn't get my hair cut, so I had to put a bandana on to get the hair out of my way. What's Jane telling you about, you know, when I was about 10, I can remember, we were 5 kids, and I had 3 older brothers, and in Switzerland, and in those days, you know, the women did the housework and the cooking and all that. Although my father, with 5 kids, was pretty good in helping my mother, but I was the 4th child, finally a girl. My mother couldn't wait to have a girl after 3 boys, but then I became her right hand always. So always, you know, you do this, you watch me how to do that, next time you do it yourself. So from about 10, I would always be next to my mother, watching her hand me that, peel the apples. And so all my life, you know, then afterwards, when I got married and had my own kitchen, I would start making apple strudel. And so I've made many, many apple strudels. Then when I started my concert series in that little church in the wilderness in Killingworth, we always had a reception afterwards. And so I thought, you know, what could I make for the reception? Well, I can make apple strudel, you know, that tastes pretty good. And then I realized with little by little, and there were other things to eat, then people would, after the concert, make a beeline to the apple strudel. And by the time I got there, well, it wasn't anything left for me. So I thought, okay, people like apple strudel. So then I would make apple strudel for the reception. And then maybe 3-4 years ago, the Lions Club in Madison called me and they said, you know, we're going to have an Oktoberfest. And we heard from our members, you make a darn good apple strudel. Would you make a presentation of an apple strudel, how to make apple strudel? And I thought, what? You know, people are interested in that? Yeah, they are. So we had a group like that, and I thought, wow, this is wonderful. And especially I thought, you know, this is something my mother taught me, and now I can pass it on to someone else. And, you know, so I think she's looking down on us today, watching me. Are you going to do it right? And so, well, we're going to get started, okay? And if you have questions, just raise your hand, interrupt me if there's something isn't very clear. So the first thing I want to do is, I'm going to ask my son Roland, is pass out the recipe, and then if you want to, you can make some notes, or if you have questions. So the first thing that we need to do is we're going to make the dough first. I made some preparations because what I usually do at home is soak the raisins in a little bit of rum that I steal from my husband. But you could just also then use, you know, vanilla and soak them in, or just use water and soak them. But in here I have now raisins, a little bit of rum, tastes good, and also I put the vanilla flavor in here already. So that's already ready. So then now we're going to make the dough, and so as you put in there, I have a Swiss measuring cup, so I'm going to be using not the English, but the metric system. But I translated it for you because you might not have that. So I'm going to be using 250 grams of flour. And I really hope that, oh, much too much. I really hope that you will try this, because I find it very therapeutic, because I'm happy doing this. So at home, I usually turn the radio on, some nice music, I take a deep breath, and then I'm having fun. And so I hope you'll do that the same, because it's really wonderful. And then at the end, you have something to share with family, with friends. And that's where the art comes in, because it looks quite beautiful when it's all done coming out of and the whole house, of course. It's beautifully. Okay, let me get going here. I have a little bit too much flour in here. So, 250 grams, and there is a sieve. I was so afraid I would put all this out and say, oh, I forgot. And my son reminded me last night, don't forget the apples. And then you use a little bit of salt, not too much. And you probably all, when you bake so much of that, you don't measure it all. And we'll sift this. Oh, and then I have to, in here, I have a pot with just a little bit of water. And I'm going to put the heat on this and make sure it comes to a boil. And I'll tell you what to do in a minute. So we put this on high and plug this in. It's wonderful I can do this all in here, isn't it? All right. All right. Then I'm going to quickly run out of here, okay? Because I got to go into the kitchen quickly. So I can do this. Be right back. I can actually use, what I'm trying to do is here, I'm going to need 7 tablespoons of pretty warm water. And then I'll add 3 tablespoons of canola oil, just very, not very strong oil. I use canola, but you could use corn oil or any vegetable oil. So I'm just waiting for this water to heat up a little bit. It won't take me long. So in the meantime, I can tell something about, so we'll do that. I can start peeling the apples. And apples I usually, except for very sour or hard apples, I usually use what's on sale. So that could be pretty much any apples. And right now, the apples are so plentiful and relatively cheap. So buy any apple, and I make sure that I had enough. I think I put it in there maybe 6 or 7, depending on their size. And so I'm going to start peeling them while that water is heating up. And then, of course, nowadays I have this Cuisinart. However, when my mother, years ago, made apple strudel, she had no such machines. So, of course, she made the little slices all by hand, which was quite a chore. It takes quite a bit of time. And then I remember at one point, there was some kind of an agricultural fair, and my father brought home maybe some of you have seen this. It's almost like where you can make ground beef. I think it's cast iron, and You write and you clip it on, and my mother, oh, this is wonderful. So, you know, now she could just put the apples in top, do it this way. However, when I came to this country, and at some point, I inherited that machine. And the problem that I had was I couldn't find my tables. I couldn't screw it on. They were, I guess, too thick. And you know what I did? So I looked around, you know, what could I attach this to? I mean, I didn't want to do it to the dining room table. So I found that outside the picnic table worked. So can you imagine me in the wintertime brushing the snow off the picnic table and then slicing my apples? So I think the water is warm enough. So we're going to measure. You know what? Where did I put my glasses? Oh, here. My son told me to put it right here so I always know where I have them. And I put them over there. All right, so now we're going to measure 7 of the tablespoons of water. And this should be pretty hot, okay? 1, and I'll tell you why that is. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we'll put this back on here. And I'll tell you why in a minute, why this is necessary. But we're going to lower the temperature because it doesn't need to be that hot anymore. And then we'll add to that, got everything ready, got my little jar here. I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of the oil. 1, 2, 3. There we go. So we won't spill this. The idea is because now I started with hot water and put 3 tablespoons of cold oil. So this has a nice warm temperature. It should be warm. The liquid you add should be fairly warm. All right, and I didn't forget my spoon. And then you just add this to the flour. So flour and salt is in here, okay? That's all there is. Add this to here. And flour, I usually use unbleached, whatever flour. So there is no special flour required. But I don't know about you, but when I'm cooking and I have flour, sugar, rice, I always feel so wealthy. These are such wonderful things to have because you can make wonderful things out of them. So I'm always very grateful to be able to have these treasures. Not many people have that. You know that, right? Yeah. And then I'll just stir it up and stir it till most of the flour is pretty much absorbed. It's very lumpy at this point. But you just keep stirring. That should be enough. Then what I'll do, I'll just reach in here, flour my hands, get the dough off the spoon till it's all off. There we go. And then you just gather it into a ball. And you all know how to do that. And if the dough is sticky, just add a little bit of flour, not too much at once. Just add a little bit more. But usually if you just use exactly the amount of flour that I put on your recipe and the amount of water that's on the recipe, usually shouldn't have to add more flour. But also I find sometimes, depending on the weather, in the summertime, when it's very hot, you know, sometimes you need a little bit more flour, but you get the hang of that. And then you just knead it really, really nicely. Do any of you have problems with your thumbs, with arthritis in your thumbs? I do. So, you know, I try to age gracefully, but certain things just come. I see somebody nodding their heads. So one just puts up with that. Okay, and just knead it till it's nice and silky. Isn't that a good feeling? Just feels good, just feels good. And you know, from as far as dieting, there is no big fat in here, there are no eggs in here. It's really, and then if you consider the apples, I wouldn't call it low calories exactly, but it certainly, you know, isn't as rich as especially some French pastry or some buttercream torte. So it's really pretty healthy food. Of course, when you try it, you're going to have the chance, which is especially in Austria, to add some whipped cream. And in Austria, they call it Apfelstrudel mit Schlag. In Switzerland, we didn't use the whipped cream. We didn't do that. So I just keep kneading. You got the pot there now, and it's heating up. And it's, see how it's creating steam? That's what we're going to need. So once I'm done kneading here, I'm going to wrap this little piece of dough in parchment paper, dispose of the hot water, and put it into the steaming pot. Put the lid on and let it sit till I'm done with all the apples. And then you'll see the dough gets really nice and silky.
How do you know when you're finished kneading?
When it's kind of feels soft and silky. So time-wise, I just feel, and because it's very different how the temperature in the day. So if it's very humid, it just takes not as long. If the air is drier, but you feel it when it's all kind of not crumbly anymore. But you can also see how nice and silky this is getting, right? So I think I'm almost done. All right, I think it's done. So I'm taking some parchment paper. And I just make sure that I put a little bit of flour so it won't stick on it. Wrap it, and then I'll take that hot water. And I think we can dump it right in here. And put it, where's my dough? Put it right in here with the lid on. And cover it. And then I don't need this anymore, so we can unplug that for now. You need to do that. My hands are slipping. So now we can forget about the dough. Good. So now the dough can rest. We can forget about the dough. Next thing is apples. And I said to you already, any kind of apple really will do. And all you have to do is peel them. How many of you have a kitchen machine like that? Some of you, yeah. But you know, if you take your time, do it by hand. There's nothing wrong with doing it by hand. I'm going to peel all of them, and then if you have any leftovers, if you put a little bit of sugar and cinnamon and you just boil them a little bit, that tastes good as a dessert, you know. And something else that I found out, we kind of live in the woods, and the deer love to eat the apple peels. So some people say, oh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that. You just attract wildlife. But I like wildlife. So I put those out on a tree stump, and I think they already figured out that once in a while there's something there. Some years ago, I was sitting in the living room, and the living room window faces a cliff. And it was just before 7 o'clock in the evening. We usually watch the public television news. And I sit there and watch for the news to start, and then look out the window. Would you believe it? A bear. And I was so excited. Some people are very much afraid of wild animals. And I was calling my husband. I was like, come, quickly, but he missed it. So ever since, when I sit there, I look up at the cliff and wait for the bear to come, but not so far. But something nice happened just recently. My son Roland, for years I wanted a bird bath, for birds. So then I'll take my little cutting board, and just cut up the apples, first into quarters. So he put up, for Mother's Day, he got me a bird bath and put it out in the yard. And so I keep filling it. The birds come, squirrels, we have seen squirrels. Roland put up a night camera. So deer, we can see deer coming up to the bird bath. But one morning I came out, and the bird bath, it has a stand and then the bowl on top of it. And it's very heavy. It's really heavy. I can't lift it. It was shoved off the top. And I still can't figure out what kind of an animal. So maybe a bear came, I don't know. But I like to have the fact that there is, we're sharing this world with the animals and the plants because we're part of nature, aren't we? And I think the more we acknowledge that we're part of nature and live accordingly, I think the better for us, isn't it? All right, so then I cut it in quarters, get my bowl over here. I have a little knife to do the rest. So then what's also important, get the whole core, because if you get hard parts in the filling, it doesn't taste good, and it just doesn't work. So just take your time and make sure that you get the whole core out and also all the peel off, so that you only really have apples. I'll tell you something that I shouldn't be telling, but all the people involved are dead, so I can tell the story. I had a sister-in-law, and I used to make apple strudel when they would come for a visit. And her husband, his name was Eberhard, in her presence, said to me, or said to her really, Rosemarie's apple strudel doesn't have those hard parts of the apple in there. She didn't like that. And that was not very diplomatic of my brother-in-law to say that. So that's why I'm stressing that. Make sure that you get all the hard parts out. And then there's no waste because, the deer are going to love this.
I wanted to ask, I can't peel as fast as you do. How do you keep the apples from turning brown?
I'm not sure what you're asking me.
Oh, the apples will oxidize if they're left too long. I can't peel as quickly as you do.
You also take your time.
Oh, but won't the apples turn brown?
You know what? When they're baked, they're going to be brown. So no, not to worry about that at all. Take your time. Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you're really worried about that, but when you bake, that's it. So whether they're brown, I mean, if you, what is the avocados? If you have avocados, there you don't want them to turn black, of course, and then you just make sure that you cover them with, I guess you could use vinegar or you could use lemon juice, right? So the same goes with apple, but you really don't have to care because you're going to bake them. If you would serve them raw, yeah, who cares, really, yeah. You don't need to do that. We're almost done, and the dough is ripening in there, I guess. There we go. And you have been informed, right, that you're going to get a taste? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you have to tell me honestly whether you like it or not. And I really think my mom is watching over us here. I always feel her presence. I think those of you who have lost your parents, they're always with you, aren't they? Yeah. I always feel that, especially when I make a recipe that she used to make. Things she loved the fall months, and she used to love the foliage and the colored leaves. And sometimes she would clean this up a little bit here, and she would find a beautiful leaf, and she would always look at this beautiful leaf. So we're all done with that. So this will go to the deer. We'll put that over here. And now comes this part. And do we still need this? I don't think so. So we can put that away. So now comes this part. And you know, so either you use this thing or you do it by, if you do it by hand, you just take a little knife and then just, you know, slice them in a small, maybe pretty much, no, apple pie, sometimes people make it in chunks. You need to make slices. The chunks won't do in the apple strudel. All right, so here we go. I put this bowl of water for me to wash my hands in, but so far I don't need to do it. So here is the machine, the apples, and then we'll just, this is a wonderful invention. Isn't this wonderful? And I've seen some of these machines, I mean, if you're going to make, you know, regularly, they're not that expensive anymore. But for me, this was a real time saver. Isn't this nice? Yeah. I guess you could use that too if you make apple pies. And you know something else, because I have done this now 2 times. When you make apple strudel, some people then suggest, well, you know, you could do all kinds of things. You could, once you have the apples on the dough, you could, I only add cinnamon. Some people have suggested maybe one could put cardamom in there or nutmeg in there. So you can make it your own. But I kind of like the way I make it. I just like it this way. So I'm not going to patsy around with it. See what I mean? We're almost done. Isn't it great?
And what do you call that machine? Food processor?
This is a Cuisinart. But you know, there are many factories. It's a food processor. You know, so many companies make them. Some more elaborate, some do more. But some basic ones really are not that expensive anymore. I inherited this one, so I didn't have to pay for it. All right, so now I don't need this anymore. Put that away. And then I can take this off, make sure I got all the apples in here. We don't want to waste anything. I'm a real fuss pot about wasting. I can't stand waste. You know, I grew up in Switzerland during the war, and even though Switzerland was not in the war, we still had food stamps and things we couldn't get. So my mother, and especially with 5 kids, to raise 5 kids in those days was tough. So she taught me, never waste anything, never ever waste anything. So I still remember a jar of jam, and there's still a little bit of in there. Well, she would fill it with water, shake it really well. It was juice, you know, yeah. All right, so now I got to collect my thoughts. We got the apples ready, we have the dough ready, that all goes on top. So now comes, this is going to be the part that you're probably not going to succeed right away because it takes some practice. I'm going to wash my hands. Is to roll out the dough. That's the most critical part. But if you just take patience, do it slowly, not rush, you'll be fine, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So what I have, in your recipe, I put, you know, a white cloth. My mother always said, you have to be able to see through the dough. It has to be really nice and thin. So I found an old pillow, or maybe have been the sheet, washed it really well so it's nice and clean, because with the pattern, because now when I can see the flowers through my dough,
Oh, you know.
then I know it's thin enough, right? So here is the part. So I just took, you know, an old sheet. I think it was a sheet or a pillow. Make sure it's very, very clean. And now you really have to flour this really well, because if you don't flour this well and the dough sticks to the cloth, forget it. We might as well just scrap the whole thing and start all over again. Okay, so that's really, really important. Even if you think maybe this is a little bit excessive, doesn't matter. Yep, I'm putting a lot on it because I don't want the dough to stick. All right, I think that's pretty good now. Next thing, and you're going to need flour again. I'll take the dough out of the pot, and I'll show you. It's now real silky, warm, nice and soft. Really feels good, because that puree. And you know, you can probably, I don't think we have quite a half an hour in there. So try to have it a half an hour, but if it's 20 minutes, it's not going to matter that much. So then, with your hands, you just pull it out a little bit, and that's the part I would just take time if I were you. Just take the time. Put it in the middle, kind of make sure the flours, do it again. And then you take your rolling pin, and you flour that well. And then I start in the middle, and roll it, and really, really take my time. And what I want to end up with a little bit of a rectangular form, okay? So then I put it this way, make sure it's always, and then when it's about so, what I do is make sure that you don't poke your fingers into the dough, because if you get a hole into the dough, it's a real problem. So then I make sure that underneath that there's enough flour, so God forbid it won't stick. And it's not really a big, I don't mean to make it a big problem, it really isn't. So put the dough down here, turn this over, and then just continue, take a breath in between, and just concentrate on making this a nice, thin dough, because that's really the secret. It has to be nice and thin. If it's thick, then it's heavy, and it just doesn't taste so good. So take your time making the ready dough. Just keep, and then also what I've learned to do, you know, this little in the middle, and then just do little tricks like that. Get it out there, and again in the middle, because you want the middle to be thin as well. Just keep doing that, and you see how much time I'm taking. Just a little bit. And if you don't succeed at first, how do you say? Try and try again, right?
Cry.
No, you shouldn't be crying. You shouldn't be crying. Oh, I have to tell you a story. It just appeared like that one thing, you know, talking about crying. Yeah, talking about crying. And I think you'll believe it, because it can happen. It can happen to you. I had the dough nice and thin. I had the apples all on top. I had all the stuff on it. And then I was going to put some cinnamon on top. And you know what? It was pepper. And I cried. Because there's nothing you can do about it, you know. I had to dump, and there I cried. And now when I put the cinnamon on it, I'm obsessive about it. Is it cinnamon? Yeah. Is it really cinnamon? Yeah, but so you see, crying. Oh, I forgot who said that. I cried. Yeah, well, it happened. See what I'm doing? Just very patient. Just, and see, I'm beginning to see the flowers.
Yes.
So that's a big help. Yep. Just take your time. Get it as big as you can. And also make sure the edges are nice and thin. You don't want those fat either.
Now, do you ever find all the flour making the dough too dry?
Then you just add a little bit more oil or water, or make a little bit more mixture. I have allergies, so my nose is running. I'm sorry. So if the dough sticks, oh, you mean if the dough sticks?
Yeah, well, no, like sometimes, like, well, I never made this, but
Yeah.
like I make pierogies or something,
Yeah.
and they're rolling, the dough and you're sticking, so you put more flour, and
Yeah.
then sometimes it gets like kind of leathery looking.
Then you just, I would just then maybe make a little bit more a mixture of oil and water, and just add a drop or a little bit more. It's flexible, you know, you really can't mess that up. Just make sure you have a nice dough that's silky. It should be silky, not dry. So, oh yeah, absolutely. So I think I'm happy with that. And it's, you know, it's not exactly perfect oval, but it's an oval, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
How large is that piece of cloth?
How big?
How big?
I think I put some measurement on there if I because I measured it. Right? Is it on there?
Right.
25 inches.
About more or less. You know, I mean, if you have it sticking out more this way, it doesn't matter. I just was able to cut that piece out that was still in one piece. Next thing, I'm going to need my pot here, and I'm going to heat up some butter. Melted actually, okay? And so it will melt quicker. I'm going to slice it into little pieces. So, and you can use margarine. I use butter. You know, it's better. So I'll put that on here and melt that quickly. Yeah. And then I'm going to explain to you here. Remember, are the raisins that I put some rum on it, and also the vanilla already. So this is all prepared already. In here I have got sugar. In here I have ground up nuts. You can use almonds. I have in here walnuts. You can use hazelnuts, whatever nuts you have, and ground them, you know, pretty finely. And then here, what I did, because I usually add lemon peel, and lemon peel, when you scrape it, it kind of bunches up because it's wet. So what I did was I took some of the nuts and added the lemon peel to the nuts, so then I can spread it around better. And it actually smells wonderful with the lemon peel. That's what I have in here. And then the raisins. And then here I just crunched, or with a rolling pin, some bran flakes, cereal bran flakes. But you can also just use regular unflavored breadcrumbs. So whatever you have works really well. So let's see if the butter is almost melted. Just one more second. Any questions so far? Are we doing okay?
Yeah. You seem to like using the sifter for the flour.
Yeah.
Do you swear by that?
Yeah, because
Okay.
it prevents lumps.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I never sift. I'm too lazy, I guess.
But
to sift.
It's so easy.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, and I mean, they have very sophisticated sifters. I just use this old thing. It's actually falling apart.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I have certain utensils. Sometimes they get old. They're just mine. I use them, and I'm familiar with them, so I use what I have. But, it prevents lumps. Yeah, so I would sift it if I were you. I think there are some recipes you don't sift what is it? Is it brownies that you don't sift your flour? I forget what it is. Forget what that is. Some recipe they said, not to. Okay, a little bit more, which the sifting reminds me of another story. I hope I don't bore you with these stories. I have a daughter, and she used to be in Girl Scout, brownies in those days. And they made batches, and one of the batches was she had to bake something all herself. So she came home and she said, I want to make this baking batch, and she wanted to make brownies. But the ready-made box. So we went to the store, she picked her box, and then I put all the things that she needed to make it, and I said, are you ready, Denise? Yep, I'm fine. Okay, you're supposed to do this on your own, okay? So I closed the door and I went about my business, and it took a while, and then here, Mother! I came rushing into the kitchen. This poor little girl, I guess she was maybe 8 or so. The bowl with the brownie mixture, with her hands in there, dripping, the dough off her hands. What am I going to do now? So I said, well, what are you doing? Why do you have your, but you look, mother, look at the box. It says, stir with your hands. I've never forgotten that. Oh, that poor thing. So, we scraped her hands off the dough, got it ready, and then used the spatula and the stick. But I never forgot that. Kids.
She probably never forgot either.
I bet she didn't. Okay, now we're going to go on with this. So I melted some butter, could be margarine. And you see, I didn't forget my brush. Yeah. Then you just take the brush. Oh, wait a minute, one thing I forgot. Second brush, and you want to get the flour off, okay? Any excess flour you don't want up there. So you just brush the excess flour off as best as you can, and make sure you're not making any holes. That's important, okay? There we go. And then you take the other brush, and you just simply brush some butter or margarine, all works, onto the dough. Again, just don't make holes. Because I did, the things I stress come from experience, believe me.
Right.
If you brush a little bit too hard, because if you make holes in this, that doesn't turn out right. But you learn that quickly. So see what I do, not too much, just so a little bit more. So, looks good, right?
Yeah.
Good. So I'm going to knead this later, because when it's all done, we're going to brush the top with butter. So I'm going to knead a little bit more. So I brought a second stick, just in case. I was lying in bed last night thinking over, do I have everything that I need? And then I remembered that I needed a little hot plate. So I got up in the middle of the night and put the hot plate into my bag. So I'm going to put this on low, so by the time we got done with that, then we have the melted butter again, okay? So I'll put this on here and put this really on low. And it's plugged in. Yep. All right. Now, the next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to take our bran flakes, which are really crushed, really fine. And I just do that. I put in the bag and take my rolling pin and just crush it till it's nice and soft. And then I'll just sprinkle some of that, because why do you think I do this? Who said that? Absolutely, to absorb the, some apples are more juicy than others, but still they're juicy. So you see that, not too much. And then this is, my mother's special. She always added some ground nuts. They just add something really funny. I mean, some people are allergic for nuts, then they just have to, leave that out and just take the breadcrumbs, the unflavored breadcrumbs, or crushed bran flakes, or crushed corn flakes, or really anything. Now, I like nuts. All right, so we have that on there. So now we're ready to put the apples on. And that also is kind of a fun, because now you get creative. So again, you take a big breath and take your time. And now I'm going to need my glasses so I can see better. Here we go. And then the way I start this, I make, and I leave maybe, I think I put 1.5 inches or something on there. I leave an empty space around the edges, okay? And then I just first start with going all around my dough, and that takes a little bit of time, but I have fun doing this, because it's almost like you're creating a picture here. And then you just use your apples, and if you have little pieces, you just dump them in the middle, because you want some bigger pieces around the edges. There we go. And then you just fill in the entire space. I have also, and something is I'll learn, so if I have a big piece like this, when you roll it, that sometimes pokes through the dough. So I usually try to break up the big pieces. See, you learn, right? As you go, you learn. And that's something I learned teaching. Even though, you study, you get your degrees, you never know everything. And I had a lot of fun teaching science for many years because the kids are such an inspiration and they come up with questions. What? And that also kind of teaches you humility. You never ever should stop learning, ever. And so I'm so happy that you all came because you're curious, you want to learn something new. And you can see already, right? This is doable, isn't it? And it's really, you know, I have come across quite a few apple strudels in restaurants that say, you know, they're Austrian or Swiss or German. No. And, you know, when I did this for the Lions Club in Madison, I was told by I guess the person that arranged it, on that weekend they also had the Oktoberfest, exactly. And there was going to be somebody that had a very famous pastry shop. And she is going to bring apple strudel. And I thought, well, you know, I got to try this. Let's see what somebody else is doing. Maybe I can learn something. I mean, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but maybe I am. And the piece was $5, right? At least $5. But I didn't say anything to her. You know.
You make it yourself.
But you're going to be able to make it special. I mean, make it. Share it with people. My mom will love you. My mom was a great woman. A great woman. I miss her to this day. And you know, being the oldest daughter, I had to be there. And in my life, that has come in many, many times very handy. I'll tell you one thing. My father died before my mother died. And just a year before my father died, she had a stroke. But while my father was still alive, he was able to take care of her. Do you see what I'm doing? The big pieces I kind of break up. And I just fill in all the holes everywhere. And when he had died, we put her into because even though I have 4 other siblings, neither one of them was able or willing or capable of taking care of her. So for a year, she was in this assisted living facility. I still feel like crying when I think about it. And of course, I was living in the States. I had my job, I was teaching. I had to get back home. But during the year, I was on the phone with her. Where are you? I don't like it here. You know, come. And you know, I was the oldest daughter, so I had a special relationship with her. And after a year of summer vacation came, so after I had to teach summer school because I had a mortgage to pay. So then I quickly went to Switzerland and visited my mother. And she had lost weight. And she looked ashen. And she was unhappy. And I looked at this woman and my heart just broke. So I said, Mom, would you like to come to America with me? And you know, not a second. Yes. Yes. And you know, the blessing was because of the stroke, she really didn't know what that meant. She didn't know that this was going to be, you know, thousands of miles away from her home. So we packed her stuff out of that home, packed her suitcases, packed whatever she needed or wanted, and hopped on the plane in Cloton. We had to stay over, we had to change planes in Paris. I still remember she in the wheelchair going to the bathroom at the airport or going to the toilet in the plane. But she was a trooper, she did it. Roland had already agreed that it was okay for me to bring my mother home. And he had sent a limousine to the airport. And you know, a stretch limousine. You should have seen that. She said, wow. And it was by the time we got to New York, of course, it was late already. I was dead tired. On the way, she was sitting up. Oh, look at this. She had a ball. And she stayed for me till her death. However, at the beginning she was still pretty mobile. But her last 2 years, her legs gave in. And she became bedridden. And so all of a sudden I had a person that needed care. Well, I have to go back now. When I was 16, I think that will do. What do you think? So I have some leftovers, and I'll cook them with a little sugar and cinnamon, and we'll have it for dessert tonight. When I was 16, she saw an ad in the newspaper for a Red Cross home health care. And she said, you have to take this. I went, 16 years old, home health care, what do I need this for? She says, well, you never know, you never know. So in this course, I learned a whole lot of things, how to take care of an elderly person. Among them, how to change the bedding in a bed where the person was lying. How do you do that? You know, how do you change the bed from underneath that person? And I remember, oh my God, I learned this. I know how to do this because my mom made me learn this. So you see what I mean? It was amazing to me how grateful I was that she insisted when I was 16 that I would learn that. So now I was able to take care of her. Do you know how to do that? Yeah. Okay, so now I've got the apples on it that I want. Next thing I'll do, I'll take my raisins. And you know, some people may not like raisins. So if you omit the raisins, I think that's fine. It just, to me, it adds something. And then I'll just sprinkle the raisins over it. Just make it, you know, evenly. And also the amount of raisins, it's up to you. You can add a few. You can, if you really love raisins, you add a little bit more. I mean, you don't want to overpower them. Okay. I'm going to use all of them because I love raisins. And this one, of course, you're not going to get to eat because it has to bake first. But I told Jane that they have an oven here in the kitchen, and that she can bake it after we leave here, and then she can share it with the faculty or with the crew here, right?
Nice.
So then you have a little bit of rum left in here. So then where's my brush? Take my brush, and I'll sprinkle it over the... There? Yeah, right, exactly. All right, there we go. Next thing we're going to do is, where's my sugar? Oh, here's my sugar. Next thing, and with the sugar, be as liberal as you want to, or if you don't like that much sugar, it's up to you how much you want to be. And it also depends on the type of apples you're going to use. You know, if you have an apple that's a little bit more sour, I sometimes also just mix a whole lot of different kinds of apples, which is good. So anyway, so you're going to take a container and you just sugar it nicely. But you know, you can add less. Just go over the apples really nicely. I just like it because how many times do you eat an apple strudel? So the few times, and that's the only thing really. Okay, that's about right. And I better close this so I won't spill it. And then cinnamon, 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 right? Oh boy, I mean, this sits in my bones. Because when I realized that, I cried. Because I had to throw out the whole thing. And you know, you get far by then. Cinnamon. Okay, and then again, if you don't like cinnamon, if you like cardamom or some other spices, like what else could you use?
Nutmeg.
Nutmeg maybe, yeah, I like cinnamon. And you don't have to go overboard either, okay? So, then, again for the absorption of the apples, but also because I have the lemon peel in here, remember? So then this is a mixture of walnuts and lemon peels, grated lemon peel. See, and I can sprinkle that nicely. When I just have the lemon peel in chunks, it's all lumps, it doesn't get anywhere. So I figured out if I mix it with the nuts, I can get lemon peels all over. And it's just, I'm going to use that all up and put it in here. It's going to taste good. There we go. All right. And now you got to stop and you got to think. Do you have everything in there? Because it can happen, oh, I forgot the sugar, or I forgot this, or I forgot that. It happens. It happens. Yeah, absolutely. All right, and then you make sure your hands are nice and clean. And then you stop and you think, okay, dough, you got the apples, you've got the raisins, rum is in there, got the sugar, you got the cinnamon, and then the lemon peels. So I think we're ready, right? I didn't forget anything, did I? Okay, so now, very carefully, and again, I'll just use a little bit of flour so my hands are not sticky. Very carefully now, you will fold in those edges that you left. And what I do then is any excess flour, I kind of brush off, because you don't want any excess flour. But you want flour on that cloth so it won't stick. So that's important to have that on there. So just turn that over very carefully. And in all, when you do it, just don't rush. Don't ever make the apple strudel if you're in a rush, because it won't work. Take your time. Almost think of it as a nice activity that you do. Like meditation. It's like meditation, isn't it? Okay. All right. Now, I have a problem. And that is because of the baking sheet. My table is usually wider, but I can figure this out. So I'll take my baking sheet. Unfortunately, the one that is flat, that doesn't have, I usually use the one that's flat, that doesn't have the sides, because it's better to get the, but when I made the strudels for you guys, I used those, so I'm going to use this. So parchment paper, and about as big as the sheet. So you're going to, I hope I can do this way. And then I'm going to put it a little bit underneath here, because I'm going to have to roll this up to it, right? So to make this stay there, I'm going to put this knife here so it won't go away from me. And now comes the tricky part. And take your time. Okay? So now you take your cloth and very carefully, don't rush this, you roll it over. See, and it's not sticking. And you roll it over. And now actually I can pull this towards me so I have more room there. That's actually very good. See, I just learned something. So then I can put this, so then I have more time here. And again now, make sure the sides are tight. Again, very carefully, slowly, take your time, roll it over. And you see so far, it's not sticking, right? And roll it over. Okay. Now I'm going to have my back to you, unfortunately, so excuse me. And then you take, again, also make sure that you don't poke holes into the dough now. So use the cloth as much as possible because I want to get this on here now, okay? So I use the cloth and kind of push it on here, and again use the cloth and push that. And that's going to take a little bit of time. Just be patient. Don't rush this part. You want to have it on that parchment paper, but you don't want to poke any holes into it. Pull it, and then you have to very slowly make sure that is closed up here. Very carefully get this cloth out, and just do it slowly. The slower you do it, the better you'll be. There's no rush. You have time, right?
Yeah.
Okay, very, very carefully get that cloth. All right, now it's sitting on the parchment paper. See, it's a nice round piece. This we put in here. And now, unfortunately, I don't have that flat, so I'm going to have to get it on here, and I'm going to ask you to help me with that. Come over here. So take your side and very carefully put it on here. Thank you. Does this look nice?
Beautiful.
Right? So butter is melted. So the last part we have to do now is take our beautiful piece here and see, no holes, no holes, no holes. But you know, if you just take your time, you can do this. You really can do this. It's not that hard. And you just put this on here. And I guess you two are going to make this together, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, I can see this. I can see this. And it
What happens if you do get a hole? Just curious.
depends when you get the hole. If you get the hole, sometimes cut a little piece of dough from the side
And patch it.
and patch it. But it depends at what point. If you get a hole when it's already in one piece, there's nothing you can do. And so for sometimes, it's just maybe the dough is not as tight, I don't know what to call it. And if an apple sticks out here or there, big deal. It's not going to. But if you have holes when you roll it, then that's a problem, yeah.
Yes.
But if when you get to this point and some apples are sticking out, this is how I learned, because the machine, makes sometimes big apple pieces. And then, you learn as you go. The apples would poke through it. And I thought, why are these apples poking through my dough? I learned pieces are too big, because when you roll it, they get in the way of the dough. So now I always, when I see a piece of apple that's just too big, I'll break it up. And I don't have the problem anymore. But I had to learn that first too, figuring out what was going on. And then when you are at this point, you preheat your oven, I think 350? 375, excuse me again. And you bake it. You have to watch it. You want it to turn, you'll see it in a minute. You want to turn this into a nice brown, rich color. So after 40 minutes, I would kind of look once in a while to see how it's doing. So now I'm going to make a miracle, okay? So you watch me. Voila!
All done.
All done. So when it comes out of the oven, it's nice and brown.
And then you put sugar on it?
And then you cover it right when it comes out of the oven. Right away, you shake liberally powdered sugar on it.
And it doesn't melt in?
A little bit, and then you just add some more once it cools down a little bit. So you want to have it look like that. So what I'm going to do is now, I'm going to put it over there. There are plates, napkins, forks, and I think if everybody is decent and doesn't take half of it, be nice to one another. So, but I think there is enough nice pieces for all of you, right? And also, I think, Roland, could you ask Jane where the apple cider is? The library has provided apple cider for you, so that's not bad. And now I got to check. Oh yeah, Roland or Jane, in the refrigerator is the 2 cans of whipped cream. So if you want whipped cream with it, okay. If not, it tastes just as good. I don't know about just as good. I mean, it adds something to it. So I hope, do you have any questions about it? Yeah. You could lemon juice, you could lemon extract, and then also the grated lemon I use also. That's what I, mixed into the nuts that I put on top. So, there's so many things that you can do different. Yeah. For example, you could maybe use some almond extract if you wanted to. That might be a nice addition. But you can make it your own. And the thing I want to stress more, make it a fun activity. Make it when you really are relaxed.
Yeah.
Right? And take your time, put the radio on, put your favorite music on there, and make it a really, really fun activity for yourself. I mean, I bake Christmas cookies. My son can tell you about Christmas cookies. I make about 15 kinds, and they, so they end up about 500, 600 cookies, right?
Oh.
And of course, Alexander has his favorite, Roland has his favorite, I have my favorite, my husband has his favorite. So each year, since I'm getting older, I'm thinking, next year I'm not going to make as many anymore. And then Christmas comes around, which is pretty soon now. Okay, I'll make this, and I'll make this, and I'll make this, and this. Yeah, but I should make this one. No, I need to do this one. And I end up, but there again, you know, I start early enough. I make cookies that can stay for a while in a plastic container.
Yes.
Turn all my beautiful Christmas music on. And, you know, in the afternoon, when I feel like it, make 1 or 2 batches. And by the time Christmas comes around, I have my boxes of cookies in there. And it's so much fun because, you know, this neighbor is waiting for the plate of cookies.
Yeah.
That neighbor is waiting for the plate of cookies, and they would be very disappointed if they didn't. And then, of course, my 2 sons like their cookies. So, you know, it's the joy of making something really your own, not just going and buy something. It's something you make your own. It's a gift to those around you that you love. Yeah. So I'm going to put those over there and have a try, and then let me know how it tastes. Okay? Thanks so much for coming. It was so much fun doing this for you. I really, really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for coming. Thank you.